everybody, it's your friendly digital technology librarian, Christy here. We've reached another Friday, so of course I have another Film Rec Friday ready for everybody out there. Now, first of all, Happy New Year, fellow film lovers. It's 2023, believe it or not. Secondly, apologies for the tone of my voice. I'm just getting over being ill, so I know I do sound a little bit froggy, but I really wanted to share a couple films with you, specifically about the theme that I had planned out for this week. So I do hope you'll bear with me and that you can understand me despite the frogginess of my voice. Anyway, January is always filled with the idea about fresh starts. We're always all thinking about new beginnings and things like that. Plus, January also happens to be National Hobby Month. So those things kind of go really well together. And I thought, why not recommend a couple of films that focus on possible new hobbies that I do have a tendency to hear people talking about at this time of year in particular. So as always, these films are available entirely for free with the use of your Milan-Berlin library card. And with that, let's go ahead and jump in to the recs. Okay, my very first recommendation of 2023 is a somewhat odd one, and that is 2018's Bigger, the Joe Weider story. This one is available on Hoopla, and I have this one in mind for people who are looking at a more fitness focused or healthy lifestyle, particularly through bodybuilding or weightlifting. So why is this recommendation odd? I will get to that in just a moment. So Bigger, the Joe Weider story, is a 2018 American comedy drama from director George Gallo, and it's all about the real-life bodybuilding brothers Joe and Ben Weider. It also focuses quite a bit on Joe's wife Betty, but we'll talk about her in a moment. And it follows the Weider brothers all the way from their childhood in Canada to their mammoth bodybuilding empire, which was based in Los Angeles. And that empire included the launch of what is today Muscle and Fitness magazine way back in the 30s. It was a different name at that time, but that is what the magazine is, which is sort of the Bible, I guess, for the bodybuilding and weightlifting crowd. Dwayne Johnson, The Rock, cited it as one of those magazines that he religiously devoured throughout the years. The empire also included discovering Arnold Schwarzenegger and launching his career, which is a pretty big deal. Say whatever you will about Schwarzenegger's acting. He is an iconic performer. They inspired a great deal of female empowerment throughout the fitness industry. Joe was a champion of diversity. He featured one of the first people of color on a fitness magazine. And he started a movement really in the US, starting way back in the 30s, that was really focused on the idea of weight training as a means to a healthier, more fit lifestyle. So all that aside, why is this an odd recommendation? Well, when I recommend movies, I generally am focusing on things like exceptional acting, really solid directing, memorable script, ridiculously beautiful score. If I'm solely judging on those elements, I don't know that I would normally recommend this movie. In particular, there were some issues. In particular was the director's decision to feature some kind of odd, indeterminate foreign accents. I'm pretty sure it's the accent that the performers are going for is supposed to be some sort of Canadian, Polish combo, but I don't know that that's how it actually is supposed to sound. Certainly after listening to some interviews, that's not how they sounded at all, but besides the point. The acting in general isn't terrible at all. I mean, it's not bad acting, but it's not great. And I know it sounds so weird to be recommending a film where I'm like, the direction was questionable and the acting's not great. But I mean, you've got some pretty serviceable performers, which is odd. Tyler Hoechlin and Aneurin, I can never remember how to say his name. um, Aneurin Barnard are the actors who play Joe and Ben respectively, and I've seen them in many other films and TV series, and they're always really solid. So again, I'm going to lean in towards questionable directing choices for this one. Even Kevin Durant, who is always a reliable actor, kind of chews up the scenery. He plays the film's primary antagonist, and even his performance is kind of like, I don't know. So why am I recommending this movie if I'm saying like it's okay? The movie itself is, entertaining enough. I watched the whole way through. I don't regret watching it. So what's up? Why do I think that you should watch this? Because the subject matter is fascinating. I am one of those people who has little to no interest in the weightlifting bodybuilding world. Like seriously, none at all. Like I could not care less. But after watching this movie and watching certain scenes and certain little bits of the biopic being quite revelatory, I fell down this rabbit hole of internet research, man, like, and just did not come out. Um, these two guys, and Betty, for that fact, Joe's wife, are fascinating people who have really interesting lives and really quite progressive viewpoints in a lot of ways. You know, the fact that people really didn't think of weightlifting or bodybuilding in the 30s when they were really launching this empire, as particularly viable ways to be healthy and fit in the US. And look at today, every athlete that you see, that's at least in part of their regime to stay healthy, to stay strong, to stay at their peak um, levels of ability, you know, and just sort of thinking about the fact that these young men were people who were facing quite a bit of adversity. There were some established publishers at the time, and they were just publishing on their own independently. In addition to it being a time in the US when there was a fair amount of anti Semitism that was pretty open, uh, dealing with things like that. Weider also, again, was someone who very much was forward thinking in the fact that he really pushed for certain kinds of female empowerment within the industry as well. And everything that the film talks about is, presented in a fairly positive light. But, you know, as I said, it prompted me to go down this rabbit hole, and I'm looking at, you know, yes, of course, there's like Wikipedia articles and whatever that fans write, but I mean, there are tons of real articles about both of these guys. Ben was particularly interesting in that, he wasn't just focused on like the bodybuilding and weightlifting world. He was very interested in history. He was one of the big proponents of the concept that Napoleon had suffered from arsenic poisoning in the end, and he wrote a ton of papers, and he was, up for tons of awards. Both of these guys are really interesting people. Betty was, one of the women who essentially launched uh, what we see as contemporary women's health today. Like she helped launch what's today's Shape magazine. These are people who were talking about things at a time when they weren't being talked about. Um, you know, and I always find topics like that really interesting, and people who embody those beliefs and those feelings to be worth looking into. So, while this movie was never going to be up for an Oscar, I don't even know if I would watch it a second time. I still think it's 100% worth checking out, especially if you are interested in health, if you're interested in fitness, if you're someone who those topics generally aren't of interest to you, but you want to look into something new. Check out Bigger. Like I said, it's one of those films that absolutely spurred me to do my own little bits of research. And now I'm really quite curious about certain elements. And, I probably will delve back into the history of things, at the very least, probably read more books about it. So yeah, available on Hoopla. 2018's bigger, definitely worth a watch. Check it out. I don't think you'll regret it. It's a good solid pick for the start of the year. Moving on to my next recommendation, which is a little bit more like what you're used to seeing from me, and that is 2018's Little Forest. This one is also available on Hoopla, and it goes out to anyone who's looking into the hobby of, say, more home cooking this coming year. And I mean, cooking when you're not necessarily talking about hyper competitive, Michelin starred inspired dishes, but rather the kinds of foods that we grew up eating, based on fresh local produce, healthy foods that, evoke memories of comfort and home and safety. And, you know, all of that is really embodied by this movie. It's a quiet film, it's really introspective. It's all about making a fresh start, especially if you're feeling a little bit lost in life at this time. So, in Little Forest, we are following a young woman named Hyewon who returns to her childhood home, which is kind of this traditional Korean village. And this is after she's already left for the big city life and, you know, trying something much more fast paced. And it just turns out that that is not for her. Returning home, however, means kind of dealing with the ghosts of her past, both the good and the bad memories. And through dealing with those things, she's able to really figure out who she is, what she wants, and where she wants to go. Throughout the film, we are thoroughly entertained by both her adventures, but also her interactions with her two childhood friends. For better or worse, these two are always with her, both helping and hindering sometimes. And those are some of the best moments. When you think of your own childhood friends, not every memory is super positive. Like, I remember like huge fights that I would have with my closest friends. And it's what, 30, 40 years down the line, and I still recall those moments, like the bad ones and the good ones. And this film does a really good job of pulling you into those moments of Hyewon's and her friends. It really makes you feel very much present with her. So Little Forest vacillates between both the present time, while she's going through these difficult moments, and like the good moments and the bad, but while she's trying to figure things out. But it also flashes back to memories of her past, in particular memories that she has with her mother and their relationship with food. And those are some of the best scenes I've seen in a very long time. uh, I I don't know what it is about movies about food, but there's just something universally relatable. It doesn't matter what region that food is from, whether we're talking about East Asia, Africa, Eastern Europe. Food is something we all have to have. And I think we all have these trigger points, these memories about childhood that are related to food as well. So, anytime we see someone on screen, it instantly gives us that kind of connection. We understand. Um, some of the best moments in this movie in particular are when we see Hyewon making food in the present that she recalls from her past and how she makes it into her own. And that's a perfect metaphor for, learning about life, moving on, moving forward. She takes these things that she recalls and she changes it. She makes it accessible to what she likes and what she's interested in right now. And again, this movie is so relatable on so many levels. Um, I adored how, you know, watching this film at the beginning of the year really ties into that whole emotional well-being, along with that whole feel that what I was talking about earlier. We all think about new beginnings in some regard at the beginning of a new year, no matter what. I mean, whether you follow New Year resolutions, whatever, January always, for whatever reason, marks a new start. And this movie is the perfect time to watch it. The direction is fantastic. The acting is phenomenal. The young woman who plays Hyewon in this, if you follow Netflix's top tens, if you watch any of the Korean dramas that are on there, she's the lead in Mr. Sunshine, which I know was like number one for quite a few weeks. And she's just such a relatable performer. I've seen her in quite a few things, and I always really enjoy her, whether we're talking about something more dramatic, we're talking about something actiony, if we were looking at something quiet like this. She does a great job of expressing the emotions that she needs to. Her friends are really, really well performed as well. But the cinematography in this is just gorgeous. Again, it's a quiet film. There are no explosions. It's far more character driven than it is like action plot driven. But that really requires a whole lot of production work to make entertaining, because otherwise it can feel pretty stagnant, you know. But the filming, it's just beautiful. All of the scenes that include, you know, creating these dishes, they're just kind of magical. It's hypnotic. That's the best way to describe it. Utterly hypnotic. Whether we're talking about boiling like a soup or chopping vegetables, it it just is beautifully, beautifully done. And massive props to whoever was working on that aspect of it, because it's just really gorgeous, really, really gorgeous. As you probably could guess by the names, this film is in Korean, so you do need to watch it with subtitles. But as I say every time I recommend a foreign language film, this is so, so worth it. You do go through huge swaths of the film where there's actually very little dialogue, where the story's being told by the actions in that cinematography work. Uh, but even when you do have to read the subtitles, this film is so worth it. Um, I just really, really loved it. It's probably my favorite film from the last quarter of the year. Honestly, I just absolutely adored it. It's a fantastic, fantastic movie. Strongly recommended to people who are interested in cooking. Also strongly recommended for people who are just looking for a film that's absolutely gorgeous and will inspire you about new beginnings and new starts. It will definitely leave you warm, cozy, and as comforted as your favorite comfort food. So please do check out Little Forest. It's available on Hoopla Digital. Absolute cannot miss. Okay, so I know it was a short list for this week, but I think both movies that I recommended today are very much worth checking out. If you have any recommendations for films that might inspire other people to check out different hobbies, please comment with those below. If you have recommendations for future themes, definitely comment with those. Always looking for help with that. I always love putting together these lists. It's such a fun opportunity to check out what is in our catalog. If neither of the two recommendations for today work for you, make sure you check out the catalogs both in Hoopla Digital and in Canopy. There are thousands of amazing movies out there. One of them will speak to you. As always, thank you so, so much for joining me. I'm going to sign off on the episode, and hopefully I will see you next week. Bye-bye.